Welcome everyone to another edition. Well, I won't say another edition. This is a little bit different than how we've been doing our REI Genius Live. We're actually diving into our first market update for the Mobile, Alabama market. And one of the great things that I like to highlight in our real estate investor group that's dedicated to the state of Alabama and a lot of the metro areas within the state is diving into the market analysis. That's one of the things that we have had a lot of conversations about more insight to inform investors on what's happening in their backyard, and a lot of out of state investors that want to become more familiar with the boots on the ground. I am one that has been invested out of state, originally from Alabama, and love investing in the state. But a lot of times, investors that maybe be in California or Washington, D.C., where I'm based out of, they don't have the luxury of being in a great market right there in their backyard. And so being able to have someone that's boots on the ground and giving their insight, their wisdom, that's actually doing deals in the marketplace is definitely a treasure to have. And so we have Ethan Welch with us that I really got a kick of our initial conversation. Just everything that you're doing, we're crushing it in not just the Mobile, Alabama market or Alabama market, but across the nation with doing deals and the creativity and the different strategies that you and your team utilize is extremely great to see. And what it takes to be a wealth in this market, this dynamic market that we have when we start looking at real estate across the U.S. So with that, I'll let you introduce yourself, Ethan. Of course, you're from Alabama, and we connected here. But always like to start off by asking people to tell us what's not included on the bio or what we can't find out about you on the website.
Hmm. Yeah, obviously, aside from real estate, I'm a father of two. I'm an avid fitness guy. I like to jog. Like to stay fit. Um, I feel like there's a lot of habits that come from a regimen of exercise discipline that translate to real estate, right? And then balance and clear mindedness that come from something like that as well. A lot of people don't know this about me, that I'm a dual citizen of the United States and Australia. So I bring a unique perspective in that way. I also married a woman that's from Russia, carries dual citizenship. So we love to
Interesting.
travel and spend most of our free time when we're not investing in real estate or the kids aren't in school, exploring the rest of the world and falling in love with different places. So and being in real estate makes it so much more fun, right? Because you go over there and you see European real estate or Australian real estate and how much it's worth, or the different styles architecturally, and there's always something
Mhm.
to compare and contrast and relate to. So I would say that's a little bit about me that you might not hear if we're just talking real estate.
Oh, cool. What has been your favorite place that you have visited thus far? I'm just for my own curiosity.
Okay. In the United States, in the continental United States, our favorite place is probably Northwest Montana, specifically Libby or Troy, Montana. We go up there every summer around the July 4th holiday for 2 weeks or so, and
Okay.
it is, you're not getting a lot of internet service. The phone calls don't work, so you're unplugging. It's that type of experience. And My father, a number of years ago, picked up fly fishing in retirement, and he
Mm,
passed that on to me and my son. And so to go out there, it's a different type of fishing. It's a very active type of fishing,
okay.
but it's really therapeutic. It's beautiful. There's still so much out there untamed. Um, if you're out of the continental United States, we really love Hawaii as far as the U.S. is concerned. Top three out of the U.S. would probably be, I would say,
Mm,
Madrid, Spain, Moscow, Russia, and I'm going to throw in well, that's kind of an off the wall one. Not a lot of Americans travel to Russia. If you can, you should. It's an absolutely beautiful place and culture.
mhm.
Hard to travel to right now, maybe, but and then Bruges, Belgium. That's
Okay.
my kid's favorite place because of the Belgian waffles.
Wow.
We try
Nice.
we try desserts everywhere, like the gelato in Italy, or the Belgian waffle stands alone at the top of the list as the best dessertish type thing in the world we've ever tried. So Bruges, Belgium, magical place.
Okay, awesome, man. Thank you for that insight. And I think that's one of the things for me with having those experience with the family, when you start talking about your why and why real estate or why doing anything, that a lot of times we point back to our family and the experiences that we can give them a lot of times that we may not have been afforded, in our upbringing. And I get that a lot. So I always like to hear when I hear word traveler, where should I add on my list? Or right now, Lisbon, Portugal is like the next spot that we like, hey, I've been doing a little research and heard a few people there. And I'm like, I want to check that place out.
Coincidentally, you say that I'll be in Lisbon in November. So
Nice.
one of our next trips, we're doing Lisbon and the Algarve coast of Portugal in the off
Okay.
season, kind of. So we should be one of the few people visiting and on the coast during that time. But yeah, Portugal has gotten rave reviews from colleagues and other friends that have traveled there. So
Okay.
looking forward to
Good to
that
know.
one.
Well,
I'll
we're
let
gonna
you
stay
know
in
how it
touch
is if you
anyway.
don't beat me there.
For sure, for sure. That is awesome. So tell us a little bit about Mobile. What have you been seeing in Mobile? We'll talk a little bit about that, but while I have you, I definitely want to kind of talk and dive in because a lot of who we talk to and listen in on everything that we're doing is new investors and they're trying to grasp their mind. And so I really like to dive into like that first deal and your mindset on why you chose to kind of go into real estate.
Yeah, sure. I mean, here's the thing about Mobile and Baldwin, just in general, to start off. There's a what I would call a palpable momentum here. The feeling that this is an undiscovered gem of a place nationwide. When you're talking about coastal places, you've seen it before. You've seen Charleston, you've seen Savannah, obviously the big name places on the West Coast or on Florida's coast, or have already boomed. But there's a sense of this is too much coastline and it's too limited, right, for it not to reflect in the values of the place. So I feel like there's a reckoning coming as far as value and appreciation in these two markets,
Okay.
Mobile and Baldwin County, that press up against the Gulf. And you could feel it. And part of the reason that I have that thesis, other than wanting it to be true and being in this market, is the amount of commerce coming to the area. So in Baldwin County and Bay Minette, which was typically what you would consider a cash flow market, somewhat rural, not a huge population. Houses could be bought under 100,000 and cash flow fairly
Hmm.
well. That type of market. But there's been a $4.4 billion, the largest ever investment in the history of the state of Alabama, with a steel company manufacturer called Novellus that's broke ground and will kind of come online fully. They're already starting to hire. And the anticipation is that they'll be bringing over 1,000 six-figure paying jobs to Bay Minette. And Bay Minette currently only has between like maybe 6,000 total residents. So you're talking about a
That's
massive boom
huge.
to that market. And it's in the path of progress. If your listeners aren't aware of that terminology, that the concept is simply that when you have, for instance, coastline, right, the Gulf Shores, the Orange Beach, the bayfront properties, once that becomes inundated and really starts getting pricey, people still want to be close. So what they do is they step back they go north because you can't go south, and east is already occupied. So you go north and you go into these places like a Bay Minette, like a Spanish Fort, like a Saraland, which is a suburb of Mobile and has already seen a very strong appreciation. So Bay Minette's in the path of progress, right? So one thing I would say, if you're an investor and you're looking, and there's a lot, in the information age, right? You could see anything. You could sub two, you could multifamily, you could do this. I think it's very important to decide kind of a little bit about what you want to be great at and pick that, and then find a thesis about it. And, so for me, it's finding these paths of progress and trying to get there before that boom happens, because really the magic in real estate, the real magic, is in the appreciation of holding it long term. So if you could get into, Bay Minette, and they're still fair price. They're already starting to creep up. They already have. But what we'll see 5 years from now, you can't buy you can't really buy bad right now still in that area. So what we're seeing in general, that's the momentum. That's the feeling that I have, is that There's an inertia. There's something that's going to be set to explode. And I wouldn't be surprised to see both Mobile. Baldwin's already, I think it was the seventh fastest growing metropolitan in the country. Mobile's lagged a little bit behind. It doesn't have quite the coastline, but it has more of the jobs, right? Most of those people commute over into Mobile still, and there's still a lot of commerce coming to Mobile as well. So a lot of new business, and the direction and the revitalization of downtown has been something to see over the past decade and a little. So you've got all these factors that are, not something really that as an investor you could control. But when you find
Mhm.
yourself in a market like that, you have to be pleased because it means that people are coming, jobs are staying, finances, financially things are going to go well, and that usually leads to appreciation and price and rent growth, which is what we all want, right? So that being said, that's how I feel. That's what I see the future. That's my prediction for these markets, that you could buy here for appreciation and feel really confident that you'll get it. Now, as opposed to where we came out of, which was a high appreciation time, we are seeing some nuances, right? Houses are definitely sitting longer, between probably 10 and 25%, as far as extra days on market than what you would have had during the heyday of the post-COVID boom.
Okay.
Um, there is more inventory. This is not unique to these markets, but there is more inventory. Baldwin County is starting to creep um, to pre-COVID levels, really probably there now. You're starting to see supply get there, but the demand is meeting it. Mobile is still slightly pre kind of pandemic levels and not quite to what I would say an average market would look like. So there's still some more supply to come on in Mobile. Um, One of the things, like if you're really in it, right, and it's not your first deal, you notice that houses now need to have a wow factor, right? Like if you're an investor and your intention is to capture top of market rent or top of market price for your flip, you don't need to go in there and think that you can be like cookie cutter anymore. You need to get a signature, make a, put in a Mediterranean backsplash to just wow somebody if the market might support it, or, look at your comps and do something 5% better than that, right? There's some, different things that you could do, that we could talk about that you could do to make that happen. But what you don't want is people to come in and not feel compelled, because right now there are more
Mm.
choices. The impulse has been pulled out of the buy side of the market. And I think that's pretty much everywhere. So you need to create that impulse, and that's the job of the investor. Um, I get accused by colleagues, if you want to call it accused, it sounds derogatory, but of over rehabbing rentals, right?
Okay.
But I do it for two reasons. I do it because one, I also get more rent than they get out of theirs for a similar property by
Okay.
10 to 20%. And two, because my strategy typically for a rental, or always, is a burr. And I have to have, at the end of the process, I have to have an ARV high enough to support my purchase price and my rehab, or I can't get out of the property for a true burr. And
Right.
that's the goal. If you want to scale, if you're sitting there and you're like, you don't have anything, or you have a decent W-2 and you have a little bit of money to start in reserves, but you could only do one and then you'd have to wait some years to do it again. You don't have to, but you have to be diligent about your buying and your rehabbing, and targeting that ARV so you can get yourself or any financial partners out completely and not trap your capital, and therefore you could scale more. So that's pretty much what I would say about Mobile right now. Like any market, if you kind of halfway do a rehab and you kind of hope that somebody should go because it used to go, you might be sorely disappointed. But if you do it really well and you're choosing the right areas, the prices are still appreciating, so you could do well. um, so that was a long answer. You also mentioned my first deal, so I could talk about my first deal.
Hmm.
At the time I don't know, maybe you could say I was slightly embarrassed about it. I wanted to be a real estate investor, so I started telling people I was a real estate investor. I was working in mortgage banking, so
Okay.
I knew. a lot about how to value houses, how people financed houses, and that typically when people bought houses and then years later they were worth more. So I was like, I need to do this. And so, but the first one that ever came to me was a gentleman called the bank and he wanted to finance a purchase, but he was in a sticky situation. He was still three to 4 months away from a bankruptcy completion. He lived in a trailer currently, and he wanted his family was growing, and he wanted to move into more traditional single family housing. It was kind of a unique situation. It was a really, really nice manufactured home that had been modified with decking and things that make it almost look like a single family house. And basically worked out a deal where it helped him kind of out of the bankruptcy with some, payments and some trust to help him get out. And then paid him enough on that to pay off his lender and get his down payment for the next house. I also helped him with a loan on that house. And then obviously
Okay.
my business is set up in a way where we can handle investment and retail clients. My wife's a realtor. So she was able to help him buy his house. I did the financing for his new mortgage, and then I cash bought his place through a private loan with my father. My father decided he would
Okay.
take a swing. I told him I wanted to do this. It was a $57,500 purchase. I was in my head, I knew FHA criteria and that for manufactured home purchases required a certain type of what is it called, where you have to have it stable underneath, I can't remember what it's called now, but conventional doesn't require, but FHA and VA require a certain type of stabilization underneath the manufactured house to qualify for financing.
Okay.
And this house didn't have it. So I went ahead and assumed that I would sell it FHA or VA because, that's how a lot of things were getting sold. And I did that, and I did some light cosmetic work. It was a total of $8,000 and was into the property for 65. Within 30 days, it was listed, sold on day one for a conventional offer at ask of 125. So I made,
Nice.
60 grand gross, minus commissions or whatever, and some, really, really family favorable terms on interest back to my father. And then
Okay.
that was it. The business started with that loan and that seed money, and that's it. That's how I started. That money has then recycled into deals or grown with flips or sometimes gets trapped if the burr's not perfect or whatever.
Hmm.
That was my first deal. First residential deal. Strangely enough, my very first deal was an RV park syndication. But that was a different deal where a couple partners, they were already in that game, and at the time, mortgage banking was paying really, really well. I had some strong connections to capital and helped raise a lot of the money for it. So
Okay.
got a slice of the GP side, um, and also was a limited partner as well. And that deal was really good. That was when I learned how powerful creative financing could be, because we bought this down in Baldwin County. We bought it for 2.25 million, and we negotiated owner financing of $1.5 million. So the owner's carrying that for 10-year balloon at 4.5%. So think about it in today's terms.
Nice.
That's
Yeah.
unbelievable, right? And then we raised just a little over 750 from individuals and gave away. It was a equity and perpetuity model. So we gave away 2% equity for each $50,000 invested. At first,
Okay.
back then, we got away with paying a 6% pref or dividend. And then we increased that till we got to 8%. And then when it came time to refi, the bank gave us a $5.5 million valuation. So we had forced $3 million in appreciation into this property in just under 3 years.
Nice.
But we didn't want to move our owner financing, as you can imagine. So we renegotiated our limited partners into debt partners. They could reinvest the 50 as debt at 12%. Every single person opted to do that. So we didn't have to raise any additional money or recapitalize. And so we're going
Okay.
to roll another 3 years with paying them 12%. And the deal is it's just great. It was just, one of those home run buys. We bought it at 225 average market rents. And the closest, that was the rents there, the average. The closest thing anywhere near the beach at the time was 425 average. So
Wow.
all we had to do was go in, slowly bump rents and, add a few pads, those types of things, add in that,
Hmm.
get management in there to control costs and make sure. And yeah, that's how you force appreciation in multifamily, which I know you're familiar with. So NOI is way up. It's a really great asset. We really have no intention of selling it. But if rates do get better on the agency debt and things like that, we will get our partners out completely and return their capital and pay off the owner. And obviously, within 10 years, we have to figure out something. If it would work
Right.
on the debt, it's just still so juicy this
It
way, and
is.
we found a creative way to do it. And so, creative financing, looking at things from different angles, is something that I think comes with some experience and just analyzing deal after deal after deal. If people ask me, how'd you get to this point? Like, what are you doing to be successful? And I'll just mostly answer like, I'm just working harder than you probably think I am. Because I'm on vacation and you think whatever. But I am analyzing so many deals. I'm doing relationships with people that will be financial and capital partners. Um, and I'm learning from the lessons that I get, right? There's no failing. There's only, succeeding and learning, right? And so to show how that played off in single family in the future, current deal for me. I've got a flip going on in Daphne, um, in which a tired landlord, well, she wasn't necessarily tired. She became tired when the house flooded. So there was some really bad rainstorms
Mm.
down here. There always
Okay.
is. There was some poor civil engineering off of a main road that backed up to this really large neighborhood in Daphne, Alabama, and water came in because it wasn't couldn't handle the water overflow from the severe rain we got. We got some flash flooding, got about 5.5 inches in, and the house was ruined. She didn't have flood insurance. She weren't required to hold it. She had it owned free and clear, and she didn't really have the money to go in there and fix it. She was kind of just disappointed in it. And a lot of times when I'm interacting with sellers, most of it's off market and direct to seller. That's how I prefer it. But this one, for whatever reason, happened to have, there was some competition, right? It was still from marketing. I found it through my own marketing, but somebody else,
Hmm.
like happens to also was in contact at the same time. And I wanted to pay $60,000 for this house. Okay. Um, she told me she wanted 80. And I said, I knew I could go to 70. 80 would have been like, yeah. So long story short, I gave her the 80 if she gave me terms. And she said, what are your terms? And I said, well, I'll give you 20,000 down. You carry 60,000, right? And I'll pay you interest per month on that principal, right? And then I will put a balloon on it of 9 months. And at some point, 9 months or before, I'll pay you off. Either I'll flip the property or I'll refinance it or I'll get other financing in. And she said, all right, but I'm going to charge you high interest. I said, what are you going to charge me? And she said, 6%. I said, all right, I'll do
I
six, but
love
no
it.
higher. You know what I mean? So for that deal, it might seem like not much, right? But like when you're trying to do true, trying to maximize profit or do true burrs, what that did for me is mean I don't have to go find $60,000 for this deal extra. I got to find my 20 down and my 60K for rehab, right? So now I got to borrow 80. That might be borrowed at 12%, but the other 60 is at 6. So my blended rate is about as cheap as you could get it, right?
Hmm.
So that deal's in process, right? It's working out. The numbers basically are, purchase for 80, um, rehab for 60, list for 220, right? So you're
Okay.
into it for 140, call it, with soft costs or whatever, holding costs, maybe 150, and then, sell it and you have some commissions taken out and closing costs, or maybe a little seller concessions. You're starting to see a lot more of that in this market.
Okay.
You net 205, something like that. Okay, 55K profit. And I like to do 1-to-1 ratio, right? Like where my rehab and my expected profit are 1-to-1, right? So if I'm in it for 60
Yep.
and I stand to make 55 or 60, that's a good deal for me. That's the type of deals I want to do. I get a little bit skittish if my rehab's 90 and I'm only standing to make 35.
Right.
You could do that. That happened, right? You do that. I do those. Not every deal is one to one, but I think sometimes people forget that risk reward ratio. If you play the game long enough, that risk will come into play, and your reward
Yes.
will in a 4 or 6 month turn time on a flip or a bird, and you'll see values drop, or you'll underestimate rehab, or get a big surprise. So that was just another example of just hearing what they said, understanding that they wanted, building a relationship where they wanted to deal with you anyway, but finding a way to make it where it works, you know.
Yep.
So hybrid creative financing is something that is indispensable if you start doing numbers of deals and you're dealing with off-market sellers and stuff that own, especially if they own it free and clear, because they have all the flexibility in the world.
Yeah, no, that is phenomenal. And it's all about creating a win-win. And I love that you said it, rapport, building rapport with the seller. And it goes a long way to getting deals done and not really having any competition with the way that you approach. Because so many people, they don't follow up. They don't lead with value and understanding the problem that the seller has, and being able to lead with value and how to solve the problem versus just shoving an offer down the throat and not listening and coming up with a creative way that creates a win for them and allows you to hedge your risk and make a profit. And so, no, I love that approach with everything that you're doing. And one of the other things that you share with me, that you have a meetup group there in Mobile and kind of going through
Yeah.
that, and looking to give back to investors there in the local area too.
Yeah. So, it just, I feel like there's a certain paradox in life, right? Where you give away things, and the idea would be you give it away and it goes away. But what I've found in the paradox of it is, if you give it away, it comes back to you, right? So, um, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I'm somewhat of just a self-determined person. Nobody taught me how to do any of this. I just
Mhm.
decided, I said, I'm going to be a real estate investor, and I took action. I educated myself enough, and then I went out and did it. And then I learned more as it went on. Um, but so many of the people that come to me or come to the meetings that haven't done a deal, they they get bogged down in a couple of different things. How do you find deals, right? How do you finance deals, right? And
Mhm.
what they get really bogged down in not knowing and the uncertainty of it all. And I always tell people, the first thing you need to do if you want to become a real estate investor is tell people you're a real estate investor before you even have a deal. And you'll be
Yes.
surprised at, like, if you keep acting like it, and you maybe make a little presence in your friends group and family, and maybe on some social media stuff, how many people come to you when they have something that they think would fit a real estate investor, and get deals all the time from sources that I don't even know are watching me, right? And then that goes into helping people. So I tell people to do that, let people know what you're doing. And then, because I know that it's a lot easier for people to have a little bit of assistance going through the process the first time. It would have been
Mhm.
good for me, even though I'm happy that I learned it on my own. It could have been quicker for me. And that's kind of why I started it. Well, there was one other reason. I was watching this documentary about the blue zones. You ever heard of this? Blue
Blue
zones?
zones.
So blue zones are the like 7 or 8 places in the world where there's a greater concentration of people that centenarians that live to 100, right?
Okay.
So they're trying to figure out why. So they did a documentary. They studied their diet, the climate, all these things. And there's certainly some things about diet and stuff that go with the way these people eat and stuff. But the number one thing that was shown, because all their diets are different. They're not all the same. And just, Kyoto, Japan, and Costa Rica, and Sardinia, Italy, or
Okay.
whatever. The one thing they noticed, the one thing they was in every group, was an extreme sense of joy and community. That they all were structured in a way that community and people were a joyous everyday presence for each other. So that you would see 90-year-olds meeting at the corner and going to the local deli or something, and just laughing and acting young or gardening together or whatever it may be. And America specifically is very individualistic, right? It's one of the good
Right.
things about this country or whatever. But, with longevity in mind, happiness in mind, and some of those things that, the blue zones of living a long life, a happy life have shown, I thought, well, why don't that's kind of why we started the meeting, started mentoring people, trying to help them achieve
But no,
it.
I caught the
Yeah.
last part of why we build a community for those reasons.
Yeah, and so that's it. We like people come in, and I answer the calls when they call. If it's deal analysis, or can you can you turn me on to a contractor? Can you help me raise some money? Um, and those types of things, right? And a lot of times there's not really necessarily anything in it for me other than just helping these people and seeing them be successful. And that paradox that I spoke about earlier is whether or not I get a joint venture arrangement or some sort of wholesale fee or anything. um, I feel internally gratified and satisfied, some self gratification from giving away that which I've attained, right, and helping other
Hmm.
people get what they want. And I feel like if you're doing that with your passions, and everybody did that with their passions, right, that's the kind of world that I want to live in. So that's how I try to behave, Um,
Yep.
so that's it. So the meeting goes well. They're fickle. We usually we haven't played around with the timing of it. We do it once a month, usually the third Friday of a month. We recently picked up a sponsor who happens to be like an OG in real estate down here and has like a really cool, historically preserved big space downtown. Um,
Okay.
and so, we're always looking for speakers. If you're ever down this way, people that could come and share their experience and wisdom in the industry, and touch on topics that matter. We've had people talk on um, build to rent and build to like sell to, as a finished product to investor model recently,
Hmm.
which I think is a really interesting concept. I've been thinking about that for some time, and have been targeting homes that you could land bank where they have large lots or two or three lots already separated and just no house on the other two lots or whatever. I feel like being able to come in and build, like those entry level homes. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes you're going to have lots that are in nice neighborhoods, right? But infill stuff, already established. I'm not talking about building out like new neighborhoods personally right now. Just more like infill lots in established neighborhoods that may come attached to a property that you're already buying. When I come across those, I kind of aggressively target those, because whether you piece off the land and just sell it to another developer builder, whether you piece it together and sell it all as a whole and make more of a marketing pitch around it, or you build on it yourself,
Hmm.
there's an allowance there for a lot of different exits. And some of these markets down
Yes.
here that I'm talking about are markets that are a little bit hungry for healthy new supply, right? Especially supply that doesn't necessarily have to be like the track builders, the ones that with,
Right.
the DR Hortons and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, another interesting strategy that we've been kind of, we're buying multiple lots of stuff I have under contract right now is coming with adjacent lots or second or third lots or big lots that could be subdivided. So we'll see how that
Okay.
plays out over the next couple of years. So yeah, but Mobile REI Meets. You can find us on Facebook. So Mobile REI Meets. Um, that's where we post our content. That's where you can find out when our next meeting is, and maybe if we're having a speaker or not. But it'll always be catered. We'll always have some type of food, and it's really just, if you're passionate about real estate, there's other people there that will be. So it's hard to go in there and not extract some value for yourself, I would say.
For sure, for sure. And clearly you're passionate about it, and that's what it's all about. Helping people become successful that are serious about it. And would love to definitely be foot stomping and sharing REI meets and Mobile and letting everybody know about it. And would love to come down and speak and,
Yeah,
maybe
we
look
love.
at one third Friday and look, maybe see kind of coincide. I'm a huge, well, I'm an Alabama alumni. So would love to maybe coincide with the football game, get the family down and stop in Mobile and talk real
Roll
estate
Tide.
Friday and catch an Alabama game on the Saturday. So no, I love it, man. This has been
Yeah.
phenomenal, really good, and we're gonna definitely stay in touch and would love to eventually maybe partner on something and do deals because that's what I think life is all about. Like you just said, with the blue zones and really understanding like life is built to work and align with people that have the same values, the same ethics, and have that community. And that's everything that we do with REIG is our financial freedom network is changing lives through real estate. And being able because that has been instrumental in me achieving my wealth and everything that I'm doing for my next generation, for my kids, and being able to be in a position to receive abundance, but also to give abundance and show people a pathway. Because there's plenty of pathways to get there, but this
Oh
real
yeah.
estate is definitely one that gets you there
I
pretty
agree,
quickly.
man. I agree.
Awesome,
Yeah, we
brother.
definitely have to. Yep, let's do it.
Yep. No, you were about to say I cut you off.
Oh, I was going to just say, yeah, I hope you could come down and we could have a meeting. Roll Tide. We're looking forward to the year. Also went to Alabama.
Okay.
So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, looking forward to that. New coach and everything. But yeah, if you could come down and make a meeting, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for letting me talk about it. Just one other thing, if there's anybody that has a deal or runs into anything in Mobile or Baldwin County, you could reach out to me at Ethan at ehwelchinvestments.com. You can also contact me on the website, which is ehwelchinvestments.us. And then obviously I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook personally at Ethan Welch or at EH Welch Investments business page.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we
Thanks.
include that in the show notes. And no, this has been great, man. Appreciate collaborating and coming on, and look forward to seeing you here in the near future.
Thanks for having me, Johnny. I appreciate it.
All righty. Have a good evening, Nathan.
All right. Take care.
Bye bye.